First of all, for those who don't know, I'm very old, and I started very early to do art. And some things that you are going to see here were done in 1961, and actually that period of 61, 63 is the one where I will speak a lot about theory, if you can take it. And after, it's more visual, and there will be just some comments once in a while. But here I start by showing you this. And here, okay, that was a huge exhibition that I did in Germany at Tempelhof, 8,000 square meters, where everything was exhibited. All my very early work, you know, the evolution, but you are going to see it now. Okay, this is some images. They are not really necessary for me to talk now about them. Okay, it starts all here. In 1961, I am sent to the army. Okay, like everybody. We had a war in Algeria, and they were taking everybody absolutely, and they sent me to a place called Tarascon, this is the caserne where I was sent. And after 3 or 4 days, I realized that all the way up there are some lofts available for me. I could make paintings. So I go to the captain and I say, oh, you know, I would like very much to use one of those studios to paint. And he says, no, go and see the colonel, the top. And I go to see the colonel, you know, I go like this, and I introduce myself. He said, what do you want? I said, well, you know, in the civil, I am an artist, and I have a contract with a gallery in Paris. Not true, but this is what I tell him. And I need to paint. Instead of going with all my friends and drink beers at night and getting drunk, I'm very serious. I want to paint because I have to fulfill my contracts. So he said to me, oh, and what do you paint? I said, you know, I paint with my feet. He said, what? I said, yes, I put some tar on the floor and I go like this, and are you making fun of me? No, my colonel, no, I'm serious. He says, it's Picasso. I said, no, Picasso is figurative. I am abstract. He said, what are you talking about? And I gave him a whole talk about art history, and I told him that in 1961, it was possible to paint with your feet without knowing exactly what you were doing. Difficult for him, but he let me do it. And for a while, in this caserne here, I started to have an activity. Now, the most important moment is when one day, this is like a moment in my life. It's that changed everything. I was walking all by myself in the area of the caserne, and suddenly I saw a cliff with some tar running down like this. It was black, of course. Tar is black, and I was thinking, oh my God, you know, I could make art where gravity is going to give the shape of the work. I loved the work of Soulages, you know, the French painter Soulages, but you know, he was still making composition. And to me, if he did it, it was not interesting to do it anymore. So I thought, how about if I take some tar and it's going to be going down like this, and perhaps I can do something interesting. And gravity up to today in the exhibition is still part of my interest. All right, and these are paintings that I did when I was in the army. This is one that I did with my feet, you know, I pour and I just go like this. I don't control. I like the idea that I'm not controlling the result. Chance is really the master for the work. Okay, this is a typical, piece of that time where gravity is really doing the job. Okay, these are typical of the one I did with my feet. Okay, but it's important to know already, there will be soon a book coming out on all my activity about generative art, which is what I've been doing recently. And these will be the first image where uncontrolled, that's the word, in art is the most important thing. Okay, then one day I'm thinking, you see, you have to know that every day, every week, I'm thinking, all right, I did this, but I have to go beyond. There is something else to do. So immediately, during that period, very short period, I thought, that composition, even if it's uncontrolled, there is still a composition. There is a subject matter, which is like the result of what I did, but there is a background. And in theory, there is a, you know, I could talk for 5 hours, but I say, Trzemiński, a very important Polish artist, criticized Malevich, who was actually Trzemiński had been a pupil of Malevich. And making a black square on a white painting, it's fantastic. I mean, it's beyond anything. Today, it's still very influential. But Trzemiński said, there is still a subject in the painting. The painting should be the subject. And I knew about that. And thanks to this idea, I thought, okay, I have to take out the subject matter, which is the gestural aspect of my work, and cover the entire surface of a painting with a tar. So I did this, and this is me in my studio where all the paintings are black already. Okay, this is another one from before. Okay, and one day, okay, you saw before that I was doing those cardboard with paint or tar running down like this, and I was calling that déchet. Scrap, junk, I was calling my own work junk, thinking, one day that will be in museums and I will have spitted on it, I will have, and I call it junk, and I like the, you are 19 years old, you want to, say, the bourgeois, they will put my things, nobody understand me, I'm all alone, and one day it will be in museum. You have this attitude. I mean, I don't know if some artists are here today, but sometimes. And one day I thought, oh, I'm going to make not just painting. I think we have to go beyond the idea of painting, and if I made a performance related to my work, it would extend the scope of my work. So I went into this area, which is, here it was the place where we eat in the army, and thanks to all those garbage around, I go on the floor and I have a friend who is taking pictures. I hope we have several. Yes, you see, I really tell him, okay, you do it like this, okay? So, and then I go, it's very serious. I was not drunk. I was really making an artwork. Okay, it goes too fast, but anyway. And I did, doesn't want to come back. Okay, and I made this performance, and today it's on the cover of some books that perhaps you will see here. It's important. I could speak a lot more about it, but there is so much to tell you. And one day, in the army again, because, in the army, you have to clean up everything. And also, it was a place where the civil were coming to spend 3 days, and we were testing them, like how intellectual, how physical they are, and so depending if they were strong and stupid, they will go to Algeria right away, and if you were an intellectual, eventually you would have other more interesting activities. So it was a place like this, and so we had a tape recorder like that to make them talk and register. And I took a tape recorder, and I took this wheelbarrow, and I put the tape recorder, and I go like this. And to me, it was my first sound composition. You can understand, but there is a relationship between that and the monochrome painting. Here we are into a monotone, for 10 minutes. It's like a monotone like a monochrome, but the equivalent sound painting. And I thought it was interesting. And that kind of questioning will follow now. Okay, the army is finished. Fortunately, I came back from Algeria, and I'm going to Nice, and now I do paintings much more seriously, I mean in real good sizes, 1 meter by 1 meter 20, 150 by 120. And I can realize those pieces with tar, very nice and clean, and I'm thinking, now I'm a real artist. I'm not anymore in the army, and I want to show that in Paris and everywhere. Nobody showed it. Today it's being shown. And this is something that happened, which is very important. I'm doing those paintings that you just saw now, okay? What are they? They are a surface, okay, covered with tar. And I was saying at that time, you see, this is not a painting. This is not a monochrome painting. I'm presenting tar. You have no idea today how theoretically it's important. I was not doing painting, I was not doing monochrome. It was not the point. That was a very obsolete concept. But showing the material in itself as an artwork was important. I tell you why. And so one day I was in my studio, and the smell of the tar was so bad that I decided to get out in the street. Okay, so I go to the street. In those days I was wearing a tie to look serious, so I would be taken seriously. taken by people seriously. You know, you have to play. In fact, all the artists were doing that in the 20s, 30s. They all had a suit and a tie. So otherwise, you are just a junkie, you know. So that day, I go in the direction of the Promenade des Anglais in Nice, and I'm walking, and suddenly I see a pile of gravel mixed with tar. And I stop and I say, my God, but this is in volume exactly what I have in my studio. I say, this is like an artwork for me. If I could exhibit that in a gallery, it would be a perfect artwork, a perfect sculpture. Oh my God, I go back to my house. I had a friend who was a photographer, and he said, come, take pictures. And I took several pictures. Let me see if there are more. Oh, no, okay, no. We have to go fast, otherwise. No, come on. Okay. I did it. Yeah, we took several pictures, you know, just to make a statement, you know. That day, I understood again that something was going to be very important. And the day after, I go and see some friends who had a little car, and I said, oh, you know, I need to make a sculpture like this, but I cannot do it with gravel and tar. Let's do it with charcoal. So at least it would be black, like my work in general, and I'm going to make a pile, and I'm going to present it as a sculpture. So we did that, but it was badly done. You know, 4 bags of charcoal looks like nothing. But anyway, we took the pictures, and I said, okay, that's my sculpture. And but when I looked at it, I thought, you know, what's interesting here is that the same way, but there is no composition in my painting. It's the material that I show. Here, I'm going to say that I'm showing material. There is no composition. Today, you can do it big like this, but tomorrow, if a gallery wants to present it, we can make it big like this. And if it's in a museum, we can make it huge. There is no specific shape. Now, perhaps for some of you, it doesn't mean anything, but I say there is no specific. Can you hear me when I'm like this also? Can you hear me if I move? Yeah. There is no specific shape. This is a major statement, because all sculptures have a specific shape. If you take a sculpture and if you change something, it's not the sculpture anymore. For the way I say it, you know, I talk to you like if there was like a very rigorous art critic or some jealous artist, they will criticize my style, but I talk to you the way it comes, okay? But it's the first time in art history that a sculpture can exist which doesn't have a specific shape. The shape of the sculpture, okay, you see, here it's in a museum, okay, and I put the charcoal against the wall, against the corner, okay, and there are what, like 5 tons of charcoal? This is an example of, in Tempelhof in Germany, an exhibition. This pile is a lot bigger. But this idea of no specific shape. But then people say, okay, no specific shape, thank you, Bernar, okay, you told us, now what else, what can we say? There are so many things. Normally, a sculpture in the past, before that, a sculpture was made with steel, stone, wood, or what? You tell me, of earth, you know, and that was it. This is one of the first examples where a sculpture is using a material which has nothing to do with the tradition. Okay, another one. This is the first time that a sculpture is being done because of the laws of gravity. Before that, never. A sculpture, most of the time before, was a vertical thing, more or less. Huh? Okay, we make it simple. And not horizontal. This is one of the first horizontal sculptures. But the most important now is really the fact that it's generative. This sculpture, each time it's going to be presented, will be different. There is no original sculpture that we take and we say, oh, wow, this was done by the artist, and we put it in a crate, and then it's going to this exhibition, and then to another exhibition, and so on. This is totally obsolete with a concept like this. Someone that I admire a lot, Robert Morris, in 1967, made a piece at the time of earth art, where he had a big pile like this of earth with a few pieces of metal, stones, or whatever. That piece, since then, has been put in a crane, and when there is a retrospective, we show it again and again, always the same piece. This is a concept totally obsolete today. And in fact, here, for those who will be interested in that subject, there is a book of 200 pages only on that sculpture, and it's written by Bernard Venet, who is the most intellectual, most important art historian in France. He was the director of Musée de Saint-Étienne. He has been the director of Musée Beaubourg also. just to tell you, you see, it's a very important. And since then, between you and me, how many times have you seen in museums some piles? Piles of candies, you know, piles of stones, piles of anything. Artists are doing it, you know. Perhaps they don't even know sometimes that I did it. They just do it, but it's there, you know. They have seen a photo one day of me or someone else, but it's a very important work. And in fact, in my story, my life, I always say that there are 3 moments, 3 pillars that holds all my work. This is the first one, then there is one which will be coming later. It's the diagram of 1966, which is exhibited here. There are 2 of that quality. The other one belongs to Beaubourg, and the other one is here. And the last one is my generative activity today. I will explain all that. Okay, so this is another possibility. All right, and influenced by the concepts of Yves Klein, whom I respected a lot, but I was far away from doing things with like him. You know, he was into the transcendental. You know, he was like flying in space. He was the sky will be the, you know. I liked him a lot because he was very creative, and also because he was doing paintings, sculptures, lectures, music, all kind of activity, performance, and I thought, this is how it has to be. You know, I'm not just a painter who is going to make paintings to sell and that's it. We have to go beyond. And that's how, for example, I did those photographs of the road being built. You know, there was the big machine with the tar and the gravel mixed, and the guys were like, you know, making the road, and I thought, oh my God, this is very much like my work. So I took pictures. I took more than, definitely about 50 pictures, almost the same, but not exactly the same. And that in itself was an interesting thing in the context of photography. Forgive me, but you interpret what you know the way you want. But never before a photograph. There was an example of with Man Ray, but never before a photograph was without composition or without anecdote, and repetitive. The repetitive, that nobody ever did it, where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you have 20 photos, and I just exhibited them in 28 photos actually. I just exhibited them in Paris at Galerie Biguignon, and it's repetitive. And in those days, nobody was doing this kind of thing. But again, you see, when I was doing it, will it be interesting in the future? I don't know. I just want to try to experiment. Okay, the same way, okay, I am into black, and I'm thinking, what about literature? This is going to be not easy to accept. What about literature? Well, I'm going to make a book, and the book, because I was talking about self-referential. The charcoal pile is a charcoal pile. The tar painting, they are tar, okay? Each time I'm really talking about what it is. No reference to anything outside. No reference to anything outside. Well, then if you make a book, what do? Normally in a book, you write a story. I made a book, all black. All the pages are black. So the book is only talking about itself. It's a book, a black book, which is only black. So I do that, again, as experiment. Time will tell. Today, you know, you heard about Artist's book. This one was done in 1963. So for many people, you know, they think, oh, gee, Bernard did it back then, you know, so let's put it in the story of books. All right. But then one day, I was making those black paintings, and one day there is Ben. I don't know if you heard about him. Ben, the French artist, the Fluxus artist, he comes to me and he says, oh, Bernard, you think that you are doing something interesting, original, huh? I said, well, why? He says, look, and he shows me a magazine, Art International, with a double page of pictures of Ad Reinhardt. Ad Reinhardt, who was doing black paintings for several years already. Normally they are 1.51 m by 1.51 m, and there is only a cross on it, but you really have to look carefully to see the cross. Normally you see 20 here, you see only the black. So he showed me that and he said, you see, you're not doing something original. I said, look, first of all, it's not the same thing. He paints with a brush, he shows painting, he makes a composition, the cross, and me, I'm showing material. But anyway, I was 22 then, and I'm thinking, there is so much to do. Let me see. So I started to go back a little bit. I think, it was not as radical to make some compositions like this with cardboard that I was finding in the street. Okay, a piece like this is big like that, about, okay? And I painted them, the first one in black, but then I thought, oh, what about this? What about if I make them in color, but the people who acquire them will have the right to change the color? How about that? That's an idea. You know, I'm not the master of imposing something, and this is again generative, you know. Today, in those days, I was not thinking about that. I was only thinking that the work would evolve in time. It will not be the same always. And also, there was this idea that I wanted these pieces to be absolutely perfect. If they were not perfect, they were not my work anymore. In fact, there is a piece coming at auction very soon in Paris of this period, and I'm saying, no, it's not my work. It's obvious that it's my work, you know. It was reproduced in the early days. There is my signature and everything, but I say, no, they did not repaint it, so it's not my work. So that's another concept again. Okay, that's fortunately, it's very fast. So I'm doing like many pieces like this. Yeah, you can see some here, other variations. And one day I go to New York, I'm 24 years old. $150 in my pocket, I don't speak English, and when I'm in the plane, I don't even know where I'm going to sleep tonight. Lost. A potential bum, you know. I'm in the plane, and fortunately, the man next to me speaks a little bit of French, and he explains to me that if I don't have a choice, I can go to a YMCA. You know, everybody knows since a few days what is a YMCA. So I go to YMCA, but I have the name of all the best galleries, all the artists. I know everything. It's just that, you know, I'm lost. But the day after, 2 days later when I arrive, I go to the Whitney Museum, and I discover an exhibition with minimal artists. I never heard about that. In '66, early '66, in Europe, we were not talking about Donald Judd, Solowit, Carl-André Flavin, and so on. And I discover those guys, and you know what is interesting? It's that I see a relationship between their work and my work. It's the work is industrial. You see the cardboard I was painting. I was doing it with a spray gun, like a car painter could paint it. And then, you know, I was in the geometrical composition also. And I see that, but they are so much better than me. They are so far out. You know, they make a drawing, they send it to the fabricant, the guy who is going to fabricate it, and then it goes directly to the museum or to the gallery. I'm so impressed. I said, okay, I stopped the cardboard. You know, I was so, you know, my work is so obsolete. And what I'm doing is I'm thinking of doing this, some tubes that you cut like this in biseau. I don't know how to say in biseau, but anyway, cut like this. So it gives the sculpture a position because of the weight. There is more weight here and up there. It's interesting also that you can see the outside and the inside together. Theoretically, there is something to say, we will see. Anyway, and I start to exhibit those things. But in 1966, these have been done a few years after. In '66, yes, I can make some small one, maquettes like this, but I don't have the money to make the big ones. So I have a problem because very quickly, I come back during the summer 1966, and an art critic tells me that I am invited to a big exhibition in a museum, and it will be a very important show, historical show, and I have to show something which is very important, the newest thing. And I'm telling him, I said, look, you know, my last things are tubes, but they are small like this. And if I put a tube on the floor and my friends have paintings big like the wall, I'm going to look like nothing. So he says, well, Bernard, you find a solution, okay? So I go back to my studio and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to make a drawing of a potential tube. I'm going to give dimensions, bigger dimensions, and I will say that if the museum wants to build it, I give it to them. But at least I will show them what I would like to exhibit. And I make a drawing like this. And this is the most important moment in my life. I'm having this drawing, I'm looking at it, and suddenly I'm thinking, all artists are making objects. This is an information about an object. What about exhibiting information instead of the object? That would be far out, that would be interesting. Information, yes. And I exhibited that, telling them that they don't have to do the tube, and this is the beginning of my conceptual art period. That's how the whole thing started. Because immediately I thought, oh, what about making paintings of industrial drawing? You know, we have never seen that, and it's interesting. It's very objective, and I like the idea of objective. You know, I'm not making painting with my stomach. I am in reaction against those abstract expressionist artists of the past. I want to do something cold, you know, and I thought that giving instruction, information about a potential object would be interesting. So I make 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 pieces like this, and then again, okay, but then where do I go from that? And I'm thinking that one solution will be to show an artwork which is a pure mathematical equation. That would be really far out, you know. Why not? You have all those intuitions, and you experiment. Now, you could go in the wrong direction. The thing is, some people will say, oh, okay, look, why don't you just change a little bit the shape, you know? Why don't you put some red here and green here? It's going to be art, you know? But no. You have to be very rigorous. So I'm doing this, and I'm thinking about a mathematical equation. And if it comes, that's it. And this is the one. So I do that. There is one here. And, but you know, how can that be art? You know, you are alone in the entire world. Nobody ever thought that it's possible to show a mathematical equation as an artwork. And you are sitting in your studio and you make 1, 2, 10, you make a few, and you are like, okay. And you invite some friends. You know, you say, look, you want to see their reaction. And they come, they look at that, and they said, Bernar, what you're doing is very original, but it's not art, it's mathematics, you know? And I say, yes, but you know, it's interesting because if I could impose a work of art like this in art, what is very important is to be so radical, because for the first time, this painting that I'm showing is not figurative, and it's not abstract as we know abstraction. So, you know, let me do what I want to do, okay. Goes out. And I keep on going. 2 weeks later, and that's an interesting story, 2 weeks later, I invite another artist. And I say, come and see what I'm doing. And he looks and he says the same thing. He says, look, okay, look, I want to see art. I don't want to see mathematics. And I say, think about this. Suppose that in all art history, since the beginning of humanity, all artists had done only abstract art, okay? Never an end in a cave like our ancestors, no, only abstract art for reasons, religious reasons, philosophical reasons, ideological reasons, whatever, but we never did anything figurative. It never came to the mind of human being to do that. Okay, so everybody is doing geometrical or lyrical abstraction. And one day there is this guy in his studio, he's all by himself, and he's trying always to do something a little different, you know. And one day he make a round like this, then he make a little round, then one here, and then he make something like this. And he laughs and he says, oh my God, that looks like a head, you know, funny. Well, what about making another one, you know, make another one like that, you know. What can I do with that? But anyway, because he's adventurous, he's going to make 5, 6, or 7, or 8 of those heads like this. And then he thinks, but if it's a head, how about making the portrait of my wife, you know? And he asks his wife to sit here, and he makes portrait of a head like this. He makes 1 or 2 or 3. You know, it's kind of, why not, you know? Why not? He calls his friend, says, oh, come and see what I'm doing. And his friends are coming, they look at her, they say, funny what you are doing. Yeah, sure. But it's not art, it's the portrait of your wife. You see how we are conditioned by our cultural references. We know what is art, but we cannot guess what art will be one day, what can be again. And that I'm so conscious about that I'm constantly trying to experiment, you see. I don't want to fall asleep on the security of knowing that I'm doing something which is definitely artwork, okay. That is not for me. So this is how I decided to keep on going. That was June 1966, much before we talk about conceptual art. And okay, you see, this is a little bit theoretical, okay? I make it quick, because you see, there is a man by the name of Jacques Bertin, a semiologist, and he came up with this idea that in the visual world, in the images of the visual world, you have three types of images. Some abstract, that he calls pansemic, a total interpretation. You can give any interpretation to when it's pansemic. Polysemic, this is the portrait of Warhol, of Liz Taylor, but by Warhol, and it's polysemic. Everybody is going to agree, anybody from any culture is going to agree that this is a woman. It looks like a woman. But then some will not even know that it's Liz Taylor, or that she's American, or that this and this and that, or her life and everything. So it's only polysemic, where this is monosemic. So these are things that I worked on or I discovered after 1970, after finishing my activity as a conceptual artist, because I felt a need to justify theoretically my activity, and so people would understand why I did this thing. Now, many people today still think that this is not art. This is art, but not this. But then I have this line here, which is explaining the logic of coming to this. In the past, this is a Van Desburg painting, Van Tongerloo painting with, the title is a mathematical equation. So some artists already started to think about that. Kandinsky in 1912 wrote a text, very important, I forget the title now, where he spoke about the idea that art could, compositions in art could obey the laws of mathematics. It was just a possibility. Paul Klee also, very early in 1934. But yes, Donald Judd did it. He did it, Judd and Dan Flevin and not the others. And me, I am a new generation. I'm not, Judd is 10 years older than me, and I want to go beyond all that. So I'm thinking, okay, I use mathematics, but not in a formal way like this. I use it in a linguistic way, and I go beyond. And I'm very rational, because there is this evolution of a rational image, which is another subject for a conference, for a lecture. But I try to go beyond anybody by presenting this kind of work. Okay. Actually, it's here, but I should go, huh? It's not here. This is when I did nothing for a while. Okay, and yes, I did nothing. I went so far into, there is so much more work to show you, but it's endless. I developed this idea of using mathematics. I became friendly, I was saying that before, with Jack Kuhlman from Columbia University, and he opened the doors for me to go to the library, and I was finding those books on nuclear physics, on astrophysics, on many fields. And I was looking at those images, I said, this is what I should show. I don't want to, just like Van Gogh, show, you know, the stars the way he wanted to see them, but I can show the stars and the studies about the star. That would be the very objective approach to make new artworks. So I went to do that, and there is a time when I went so far. Think about this. I told you before about this idea of the intellectual thing for the Oberlin College, but at the end of this period, I was calling Jack Kuhlman. Jack, can you tell me about a book which is very important, determinant today in the knowledge of human being? Okay, this one, Bernar, good. I have a stand, I put it on a stand, I exhibit this book. Well, next to it, I actually put the title page and the content page of the book. So people, when they get close to it, they don't have to, everybody is not going to fight to see what it is. They have, information theory. Okay, and then, I see. Okay, now this artwork, when a new book comes out on that particular subject, you take the book, you put it there, you put the new book, and you put the new title and content page. You see, a work of art will evolve with time. This is generative again, okay? Not digital generative, but it's generative, like many other pieces that I made. And so I go so far. You know, I don't decide which book. I don't even know how it will look like in the future. So I just, not being depressed, on the very contrary, because fortunately for me, I was only 27 when the most important museum in Europe, the Krefeld Museum, Dr. Wember, a giant in Germany as a museum director, invited me to make a retrospective exhibition of all my work. And then at the same time, then New York was also asking me to make a retrospective at the New York Cultural Center. So they were like recognizing my work to a certain extent, okay? But so I was not, it's not because I got depressed or anything, but I decided that I would stop doing my activity as an artist, because what I did is exactly what I could do. I went as far as possible. I don't see how you can go beyond concepts like this, so I stopped. That's it. I will never do art again. I will never do art again, definitely. Okay, so I stopped for 6 years, and because I never went to school, and I say that before, I never went much to school, I am back -2, not back +5 like many intelligent people. Back -2, I started to have a need to articulate my ideas, my thoughts, and to say why what I just did is art or can be accepted as art. So I started to study a lot of, philosophy, just to know how to speak, and then also semiology to find, elements like Jacques Bertin, Roland Barthes, arguments. Roland Barthes about the neutrality in art and so on. Structuralism also, just several disciplines like this. I started to study those things, take notes, and start to explain my work, criticize my work, see the limits of my work, think that it was perhaps possible to go beyond in a new way where I would accept me, the body, the personality. And so 6 years later, I started to feel a very strong need to work again. After all, I was a human being, but it was visceral, I wanted to work. I wanted to work again. I had too much energy. And so I started to work again. Now, what do you do since you went so far, So I hide myself. Nobody knows that I'm working, but I'm starting to do some paintings now. Very simple, self-referential, monosemic. You have a round canvas, you have an arc, and it's written arc 286 degrees. It's obvious, this is what it is, no reference to anything else. I'm thinking, okay, we'll see where I go. Okay, look, I did arcs, I did angles. I'm thinking, what about the idea of line? How about if I exploit the idea of line? And here I do straight line. So chords. This is a chord subtending arcs of so many degrees, because I want to give the mathematical definition in order that there is no confusion, no interpretation. I'm against the idea of interpretation. The surrealists, they did it enough. They made enough jokes with that. So I don't want to. Okay, and then again, all right, I did the arcs in painting. Oh, now what? What do I do? Do I make 500 or do I make a move? And one day I thought, how about taking out the canvas and putting only the subject? The subject is the arc. I'm going to put the arc. So this is in wood, okay, covered with graphite, like if it was a drawing, and I put them on the wall like this. And again, position of two arcs of 235 degrees, 50, whatever it is. And then, okay, I do it with straight line. Okay, then I do it with the angles, And then I'm thinking, but now what can I do? Okay, I made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I want to move. And one day I'm thinking, okay, the subject now is not anymore so much the mathematics, it's the line, okay. How can I make a line which is not like that? And I'm thinking that I'm going to make, okay, this is another angle, and I'm making, okay, another arc. I'm sorry, I didn't know that we had so many. Okay, and I'm going to make an indeterminate line. But I make one like this. I remember I paint on a plywood, I cut it, I covered it with graphite, I put it on the wall, and some friends are coming to visit me and they say, Bernar, you cannot do that. You cannot do that because people know that you are very rigorous, geometry, minimalist, and so on. If you start to do crazy things like this, nobody is going to be interested in your work. And I said, okay, you take care of your thing, we'll see. What can happen? I'm going to do it for 6 months, for a year, 2 years, and I will see if I make a mistake. Well, I throw it away. It's like a writer. A writer is going to write, and the day after he reads again, he says, no, it's junk, okay, and he throws it away. Okay, I will do that, that's all. So I did this one, and I did this one 2 days after, and a week after, I make a few variations with, very important to say that the first one was very controlled, and these are starting to be more free, uncontrolled. And then one day, I do those things, and I'm thinking, oh, now the relief is starting to get into space. How about making sculptures then? And I do it with sculptures, with steel. Not easy to do, much more difficult than with wood, but I did this one, and I made a few, and I started to exhibit them in Paris. And then, okay, then they become more complex, and I'm getting into the indeterminate line in metal. And then I say, oh, but what about making in sculpture, the arcs and the angles and so on? So I go back and I do this. Oh, I'm already here. Yeah, I'm already here, yes. Anyway, you can guess that I do angles, arcs, and everything, and they become more and more physical, of course, and I will come back again on it and make the biggest in the world and so on. But in the meantime, what happened one day, I get bored. I've been doing that for 3 years now, 5 years, making indeterminate lines and so on. And one day, I am in my house, and I get bored with everything. I remember the day I gave a lecture, my wife came to that lecture. We knew each other for about 3 weeks already. It was in Belgium. And I say, I get bored with everything. With where I'm living, with landscape around my house, with seeing this and that. And I look at her and she went like, oh my God, he's going to get bored with me. And I said, no, don't worry, it's going to last, don't worry. Anyway, but this is me. Anything in my house, I change the decoration all the time because it has to be moving, I need action. And one day, I'm thinking, okay, look, I'm sick. There is a soloist here, there is a drawing of mine, there is a Donald Judd here, and I say, let's take all that junk out, and I'm going to write a mathematical equation, not an artwork, because I'm sick of artwork. We are going to write a long mathematical equation, something that nobody can understand. And I put it on the wall, and when it's finished, I look at that, and I'm thinking, my God, this is so fresh. I mean, look, phew. It's not repetitive. It's not the kind of thing that everybody sees around. Oh, okay, I'm going to do that. And fortunately, that year, it was the year 2000, I got invited in many museums to make exhibition, and I decided that I was going to do that and paint on the walls of a museum those mathematical equations. For them, it was fantastic because no shipping, nothing at all. And for me, I was happy to develop this new idea that I had. So I made them like this on the museum, on the walls, but I came back home and I decided to make them on canvas. So some of the pieces that you see here, this one, for example, is here. And no, that's the only one. And this one, yes, they are here. And I got very excited. To me, that was so fresh. And this is all I want. I want something else, something else. So I did this. Okay, oh my God, it goes very fast. And more recently, this is called diffeomorphism. Do you know about diffeomorphism? It's not easy. Huh? It's really a field of mathematics which is very complex, where it talks about deformation, on a surface like this. And I discovered that, about 7 years ago. I said, oh my God, it would be nice to make paintings where what is written is about diffeomorphism, but then the painting makes the demonstration. This is how I made those pieces, which are also exhibited here today. Okay, these are others. Okay, another one again. Okay, but then, all right, it goes back because everything is done at the same time. Then, yes, the French finally look at my work a little bit and they think that I could make a show at Versailles. And in Versailles, I made a big exhibition like this with arcs, which are more complex than what I was doing before. And these also, I call that leaning arcs, and they go like this, and you make very complex installations. Okay, then people are asking me to make monumental piece. This is one of the first one after the one in Berlin on Uraniaplatz. I did a copy of it in Nice. So again, same subject matter. And on the other side, or on this side, there is written also the number of degrees of the arc, so there is no interpretation. Okay, and then indeterminate line, this is in Denver, Colorado. Then this is in Seoul in South Korea, big indeterminate line. More complex, again, 2 of them. Sometimes there are 3, 4, 5. Okay, this is in New York, in the streets of New York. Okay, and then the arcs, the opportunity again to make a very big piece. This one is 37 meters long. Just to tell you the challenge, but that piece was carried on a truck between the north of Germany to the south north of Belgium to the south of Germany on a truck in one night. Crazy experience, but you know, if you don't try, you don't do anything. Okay, oh, this is Versailles, where I was invited to make an exhibition, and but the president of Versailles said to me, Bernard, but okay, we make an exhibition, but you have to make a gesture or something, you know, something special. And I was driving back to my house to tell my wife that, gee, you know, I'm going to do Versailles. I mean, I was excited, so excited. And then I thought, oh yes, I'm going to put 2 huge sculptures surrounding Louis XIV like this. And we did it. Okay, this is an overview. I don't like this picture because it looks like if it's just as big as me, where between this and that there is 35 meters, so we don't get a good perception of. Okay, that's a piece which is now in New Zealand in a park called Alan Gibbs Farm. He has a collection of enormous piece. You know, you go from one piece to the other, you need a jeep, because here there is a Richard Serra, there, over there, 2 kilometers after, there is a huge soloist, there is Anish Kapoor, you know, and we made that piece, and he gave me the best possible spot in the park. Okay, these are other pieces that was exhibited in Budapest some years ago. Okay. Okay, I tell you this. How many minutes do we have? Can I say something? I have to stop right now. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. What, I still have 3 minutes? Okay, good, good. Anyway, if you want to go, you can go. Huh? But the best is to come. The best is to come. Anyway, one day I get this phone call from, got so many phone calls. Oh, I have to go like this? Oh, can you hear me in the background? You can hear? Oh, okay, then it's boring. Okay, so one day I get a phone call from a German dealer who says, oh, we have the possibility to make a very big sculpture in Brazil. Sorry?
Mexico.
Okay, in Mexico, if she prefers Mexico, it's in Mexico, in fact, yes. In Mexico, so I said, okay, so they say, okay, go and give a look there. So I go, they invite me, I go on the spot, and my God, the people are very rich, you know, there is an hacienda, huge, beautiful property. In front of it, there is a lake, 6 hectares lake, you know, huge, beautiful. And yeah, I understand that he's collecting some serious stuff, so much that here on the left, there is a Richard Serra, 25 meters long, 5 meters tall, huge piece. Oh, beautiful. He says, okay, Bernard, so we're going to go around and look for a place. Said, no. You take out the Richard Serra and I put my piece. First, he took me seriously because I said it seriously. He says, oh, but Bernard, you don't know. You know, we had to cut trees in the jungle to bring back, because it's the middle of a jungle. We had to cut trees. It was ready to, you know, I said, no, I'm kidding, okay. I'm kidding, but he really got the best spot, huh? He says, yeah, it's a good place. You know, when he came, he took the best one. I said, okay, let's give a look. So we take this Jeep and we go around, you know, and I find a place, and I said, okay, we can put it here. All right, good, okay, we have a contract, everything is fine. we are sending the sculpture, and he sends me a message, and he says, Bernar, we found a better spot. I said, oh, good, okay, but then can you send me some pictures so at least I know that it's okay? And he sends me some picture, but I don't understand. You know, I don't understand. It's like jungle, it's, you know. So I said, okay, look, okay, go ahead, and so on. So I come to install, and suddenly I realize that this lake of 6-7 hectares was totally dried, no more water. There was a cube on the right side. Richard Serra was there. A cube here, 7 meters by 7 meters by 7 meters in concrete, waiting for my sculpture to come in. And then we would put back the water. So, hey, Serra, hey. You know, so this is where, you see, and you have the entire thing, Serra is there and I have that piece. And my piece is also, he was 25 meters by 5 meters, and I'm 25 meters by 5 meters. You know the competition between artists. Huh? Anyway, so it's really incredible. If they had asked me before to put a sculpture on water, I would have said no, because it's too, you know, too fancy, too crazy. You know, you don't put. But when I saw the result, I said, okay. It cost him too much money anyway. Okay, all right. And then many years ago, the French government one day contacted me and said, oh, Bernard, we would like to make some sculptures near the highway. So people, when they stop, you know, they have a drink, something, they see an artwork, it's very nice, you know, and so on. I said, oh, I have an idea. And I sent them a plan where the entire highway was going to be taken by my sculpture like this. So I sent them a plan. They got excited and they said, we are going to do it. But the French are the French. Took them 35 years to think about it. Meetings everywhere, champagne all the time. I was the one who was paying. The dinners, I was the one to pay also for those dinners with the president of this, with the minister of that, you know, and we never did it. And one day, one man from Belgium says to me, oh, what about that sculpture? Did you make it? I said, no, we never made it. He said, I make it. 1 year and a half after the sculpture was in place. So now the sculpture is on the highway A411. It's the most busy highway in Europe, actually. 150,000 cars are passing into it every day. So there are more people who see my sculpture than people who see the Gioconda in the Louvre. Okay. That's the first time I say it, actually. First time I say it. I never thought of saying that before. Okay, and now I have opportunities to make very big sculptures. This is in Austin, Texas. This is in Nice. It's 30 meters. If you go to Nice at the Promenade des Anglais, you will see that sculpture. Then one day, I am in a bar with Dennis Oppenheim. In those days, Dennis Oppenheim was very well known. We were very good friends. We were sitting at a bar, drinking a beer. And it's a bar where, you know, the bar is here. We are together like this. And then there is a big window on Spring Street, opening on Spring Street. And suddenly I see my friend, art critic, who wrote a big book on Andy Warhol, Jacob Balteshuva. And he passes by, he's with someone, and he sees me, and he goes like this, I said, hey, hi. But of course, we cannot hear each other because he's in the street. And he's with his friend, and he says, that's Bernar Venet. And the man goes like, you know, Bernar Venet, he doesn't know. And my friend goes like this, he says, you know, the one. Okay, just this gesture, he knew that it was me. And I said to Dennis, something is wrong. I don't like the idea that people are going to, you know, to identify me with this. There is worse between you, it's the day they will do like this. Okay. My wife has said to me that I should make you laugh, so I do it a little bit. Anyway, so I'm thinking, okay, I have to develop again my work on straight line and arcs and so on. Okay, so I go back home and I create a big maquette, you know, on a table like this, big maquette with the walls, the ceiling. I paint the floor in gray, just like in galleries. And I have some straight line like this. I have 100, 200, and I put them against the walls like this, you know, I make compositions. And with my camera, I go very low and I take pictures, and it looks like if it's real, like if it's really big. There is a technique for that. And it looks very good, I'm happy, you know, I'm doing several variations. And suddenly, at a certain point with my hip, I touch the table, and everything goes on the floor, and I said, oh, damn it. I said, oh, no. And I look, and I'm thinking, no, but very interesting that they fell, and they create this pile of straight line. oh, what about doing that? You know, it's interesting. Chance created the artwork. It reminds me of some works that I did before. And so, 2 weeks after, I am in my studio in the south of France, and I'm installing this, and I'm inviting guests to see a performance with straight line. So, here we are. This was done by an assistant, actually. Yes, we push, okay, you see, falling again, okay, again, and again, okay. So I created the sculpture, completely, gravity created the sculpture, and this is really the artwork. The performance is interesting in itself to see how it happens, but the real result is this, the marks on the walls also, you know, which are the witness of the process and so on. So I thought, oh, this is interesting, I'm going to develop that, and this is again, because I did it several times, a generative work of art. Okay, these are other variations. Okay, well, actually, these are called collapse, you know, it's when the pieces are horizontal on the floor. Okay, these are other variations. Okay, and then one day I decided, I could not find solutions to develop my angle pieces, you know. I did 1 or 2 things, but it was not very satisfying. And one day I thought about making angles like this on a vertical position. And then I thought, oh, if I did this, now I can do the collapse with the angles. So I did this and collapse, you know, and I push one and everything falls down, okay, like this. And then I made that very big piece in the south of France at the foundation where we are. Okay, then again, collapse. This is the most interesting of my work, but you are going to see when exactly. Okay, this is at Tempelhof, again, collapse. Okay, with straight line, 100 tons of straight lines. Okay, an exhibition in Venice. Okay, this is in Paris at Versailles. Okay, this is in Torino. Yes, one day I woke up 10 years ago, and I'm thinking, I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything really major, you know, things that's something that people will remember. And so I called my assistant. I have a factory in Hungary. They work only for me, so it's very efficient. You know, I order them something, they do it right away. I say, you stop everything else, you do only that. Where if you work with a factory who works with other people, you have to wait in line, right? So this is ideal for me. So I call them up and they say, okay, you make 200 arcs, 5 meters diameter, okay, and so many degrees, so many degrees, so many degrees. And 3 months later, I received a bunch of arcs like this. And the idea was that I was going to make different configuration over time. So this is the first one I did like this, where it's the idea of collapse. Okay, this is the year after. Each year I was changing. I have been changing each year, actually. And then that's another year. And that's actually the sculpture that was exhibited around the statue of Louis XIV. I presented it as a collapse in our sculpture park in the south of France. But it's exactly the elements. Okay, that's an overview of the piece. Okay, and that's an exhibition that I did at the Louvre. The Louvre in Lens, the Louvre has an extension in Lens, and they wanted me to make an exhibition, and I took 1,000 square meters and I covered completely. I made a mess like nobody would dare to do in the Louvre, you know. But the director agreed, and it came out very well, actually. This is more recent. This is 2 years ago in Paris at Place Vendôme. I was asked to make, you know, a big demonstration. That's another piece, which is again a collapse. Okay, oh, this is a more interesting piece where I thought, let me see, there is another one. Yes, yeah, okay, you see. Yes, I thought, I have only 5 minutes. I have been a victim all my life. Anyway, here what's interesting is that I made a hole like this, you know, concrete. People come down and we are down there and they see the arcs, you know, 25 meters long. It's very impressive, but it's really an experience. It's called perception outside and inside. And it's really something new in the frame of my work. Okay, no, that was beautiful. Look, this is in Bodrum in Turkey, where they asked me to make a sculpture. I had 2 days to decide what to do, and then in 2 months they did install those 2 pieces. Okay, that's another project that I would like to realize where people have, vertical, diagonal, horizontal, and they walk under those big pieces. Yeah, you have a better understanding with this. But I don't have nobody for the moment has been asking me to do it. Okay, so now, installation. This is Tempelhof, and again, a piece that is going to create itself in a particular way, you see. It's installed like this. Then I come with a forklift. This is me over there, all right? And I push, I'm going to push. I'm scared to death because I'm afraid that something wrong could happen. I push, I push, I push, and this is what is happening. The funny thing is that I did it in the south of France. Everybody, yo, they applaud. In Germany, not a word. There is a difference between two different cultures, you know. Okay, one day I had this idea with a straight line to make a line, a very big line, 100 meters long, in New York, for example, okay? So think about this. You have a line like this, okay? This is not New York. I think this is Hong Kong. But anyway, you have a line like this, and what is interesting is that, you know, you are far away and you say, oh, it's interesting because exactly on the other side, not the antipode, comment on dit, not exactly vertical. It's, as you see, it's a, you have Paris or you have New York. So already it's interesting. You walk by and you say, oh my God, interesting. Right there, there is Paris or something. But it's not enough. Okay, this is a view in New York. This is a view in Sydney. But what is happening is that at the foot of that painting, of that artwork, you can go down the stairs and you find yourself in a room which is 10 times like this one. And on the walls, you have huge screens, for example, on which you can see live what's going on the other side. Not only you can see, but you can get close. If your cousin is going there next week, you can make an appointment and say, oh, we meet at, you know, we look at the time and we meet. And hey, and you can talk, you know, you can talk to the person. So it's already very direct, but you can have a communication with the people. But there is better than that. Okay, so this is a view like this. But then there is this, and there is that. If you put yourself, all those things, you know, which are, okay, you have, you go in a room and you put the mask, dad, the mom, and the 2 kids, they sit down and they ask to go to Hong Kong. Okay, suddenly, up, they see themselves in an helicopter. Oh, wow, okay, they look on the right. If they are in Paris, they see the Eiffel Tower. They look here, they see the other side of Paris. Okay, and the captain and his helper say to you, okay, are you ready? Yes, we are ready. My God, it's incredible, it's real, you know? And suddenly, boom, you know, thanks to those little things here everywhere, you feel the vibration, the sound and everything, and you take off and you go. And if you are in New York, for example, you are going to go Canada, then Iceland, then you go England, then you of course, Latvia, you know, and you go to, you pass China and you find yourself in Hong Kong. And, you know, and they tell you, they say, oh, this is Paris here. Oh, this is the town. And you see it. I mean, it's incredible. It's so realistic. What I'm telling you now will exist one day. And then you go out and you walk in Hong Kong in the street like this, you know, with all your stuff. You think you are there. I don't know if some of you have experienced that, but it's pretty amazing. And then you go back to the helicopter and you go back to where you were before. So this kind of experience will be possible. It's really a project that I have since 1989, but it costs so much money that because we have to make first we have to have 2 countries who agree to do it together, and then you have to have a place to do it, then you have to have some rich people to pay for it. In the exhibition, you will see 4 paintings where you see angles like this with very bright colors, okay? You will see 4 paintings with black frames. All right. This is, This is done from generative art, okay, with the technology of generative art. Some friends of mine, you know, pushed me a little bit to get into that direction because it corresponds exactly to my way of working. You saw, for example, the angles. You saw them as painting, you saw them as wall relief, you saw them as sculptures, then you saw them monumental and so on. And I could also do that. Yes, okay, this type of work, you will see. And we thought that I could do it also with generative art. But it was a way for me to really extend the scope of my activity. And we did it, you know, we took a coder to whom I gave a lot of information. He said, okay, what do you want? I said, I want angles. Okay, what kind of proportion? So I say, okay, the square section of the angle will be 1/10 of the length of the angle. All right. How many angles do you want? Oh, you know, you have to give me two numbers. Okay, between 20 and 65. All right, okay. Then what color? I said, oh, any color. Red, green, blue, you know, relatively bright, you know, aggressive. Not necessarily, I don't think I even said that. Okay, but then how do they come on the screen? Oh, you know, you make them fall, so it will be very much related to my collapse piece, you know, and they will take a configuration, a position that is totally unexpected. That's what I like to do. Okay, the guys worked for 6 months. It's very complex to do. And 6 months after, a few changes, a few things, we got this result on the screen. And I said, okay, sure, we are going to sell it with NFT through Sotheby's and Art Block in Los Angeles. But, you know, I like that so much. I want to make paintings. So I decided to make paintings. One of them, the red on the black background, is the first one I made. You know, I was like so excited. I can see there is a potential for that. But then I thought, but you know, since it's generative, and I don't decide exactly which piece I'm going to do, how about that idea? What? Well, okay, the coder, I'm going to ask the coder to push 10 times to get 10 images. I don't want to see them. I don't want to see them. Those images are going to be sent to a place, okay, that we work with all the time, where there is a machine that will paint from the instructions of the screen, that will paint on a canvas the result. I will still not look at it. The painting will be sent to my studio, but I won't be there. They are going to put stretchers, frame, and everything. We send them to the gallery in Paris, Galerie Perrotin. All right, they hang the paintings on the wall. I still haven't seen the painting. There is an opening. I don't go to the opening. The pieces are going to be sold. I don't want to see the pieces, and I will never see the pieces. Never. And we did it. But you see, it's very normal that you smile, because it's not the kind of thing that you can do. You know, you don't do this kind of thing. How can an artist pretend that he made an artwork that he never saw in his life, but he will never see in his life? Well, I could give you a lecture that will last 20 minutes and explain to you, and you will be completely in agreement with me. But I'm told that we don't have the time. But you know what you can do? I like to be here, so invite me again. Okay, thank you.